Hello friends, welcome back. I'm Sarah Liz and today I have an adorable project for you. This is a perfume bottle gift box with, I'm going to call it a shaker window, but it's really like a gold filled window. It is just cute and elegant. I love it so much. So I have begun by adhering two pieces of 65-pound cardstock together. I have some white shimmer cardstock and a deep navy. And I use these Sizzix double-sided adhesive sheets. I love these because there's no plastic in there. It's just sticky. So I'm not creating too much bulk in the layering. I have my die that cuts out the box and then a die that cuts out like a label for the front of the perfume bottle. And I've just taped that right into the middle to create my window. So this cut beautifully through the two pieces of 65, and part of that's because we didn't have the extra bulk. I ultimately want to fold these the other way, but because I have two layers, I am using my ruler just to score around the window or to fold around the window the wrong direction just a little bit first, so it's easier to find those folds on the back and to make sure that I'm not going to cause myself problems or rip anything because I'm moving too quickly. And here's the teeny tiny little box that it makes. I love this. I'm thinking about using it as like an advent calendar or something. It doesn't have to be a perfume bottle. I've also cut two pieces of acetate out using that same die, just the one piece right there that makes the back of the box. And so I'm going to bring this to my trimmer and I'm finger pressing along those score lines to make sure that I can butt that right up against the blade of my trimmer. And I am just going to cut that down to size, and then I'm going to trim a tiny sliver off of each of the two sides, the short side and the long side. That's how small that is, just enough that it fits neatly inside the box. This is my leftover cardstock, like double-sided cardstock, and I'm adding some Scor-Tape. So I'm going to add it to both sides. It's a 1/4 inch wide, and this is going to create a double-sided sticker that we're going to use to make our little window, okay? Now here I have my two pieces of cardstock and then the sticky from the Sizzix sheet. And I'm also creating a little bit of bulk because the Scor-Tape has some plastic in there. So I have two layers of plastic as well. So I cut in half almost down that Scor-Tape. And now these are about 1/8 of an inch and there's just a bit of thickness to them. This creates a pocket more than, like you've made flat shakers before, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted things to move easily. So I'm lining this up right along the very edge of my acetate, and I'm being really careful here. If I come in at all, you'll be able to see it through that window, and I don't want to see it. I'm also making sure that I am laying the white shimmer cardstock side against the window. So all of those are white shimmer. And then when I release that paper, you'll have navy on the back of all of them. There is one piece that goes from edge to edge on the long edge, and I am going to remove everything except for that one. I am going to pull that one back just to make sure I can pull it back. And then I'm going to lay it flat against it again, and I will add my other piece of acetate. I'm leaving a way to get into the pocket. I put this in my scoreboard just so I had two straight edges. It was a little easier to line it up this way. And then I will press on those three sides, and you can see I have this teeny tiny little pocket, right? It's perfect because I'm going to use this fill from Michaels. These are not sequins. This is the little tiny gold flecked pieces of something. They have a little weight to them, a little bit of bulk. And I love the way that they move in here. You can tell even visually that there's some weight to this. And it's just super elegant. So I am checking to see how much is in there to decide if I want more. I mostly don't want you to be able to see in, right? I want to keep whatever I put in this box a surprise. So I am using my pokey tool and I am removing that last piece of release paper, and it's much easier because I started it before we put our gold pieces in there. So here is my little window, my gold filled window. I now have 1/8 inch score tape, and I am going at the very edge of this window. I'm actually overhanging it just a little bit. So you're going to see I'm trimming off the short edges, but I'm also going to take my large scissors and I am going to trim right along where that tape is, because I don't want any extra sticky stuff hanging out and mucking up my box. Okay, so I'm removing the backer from those 2 long strips, and then I will do the short edges because I want to make sure I'm covering all the stuff. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put inside this box yet, and I want to make sure nothing's going to sneak out of there. So I will remove the final pieces of backing paper, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this in here. So in the end, I just put it on my flat surface, and I'm going to line up one corner and I'm going to press it flat. I mean, I checked it off camera. I checked it to make sure that it fit right, and it did. So I knew if I lined up the first corner right, I'd be good to go. Now my gold fill window is done, and we're just assembling the box. You could have skipped that whole step. You could just make the box. So I am folding over the flap, and I like to assemble my box by laying all the pieces flat and gluing that way so that I make sure it ends up with 90-degree corners. Okay, so I now am just kind of closing everything, making sure it fits, and I'm going to add glue to the short flaps, right? The flaps on the other side are longer. That's where you'll be pulling the box open and closed. Those longer flaps help it to stay closed once the box is assembled. And from here, you could decide if you want this to open from the bottom or the top. Because I'm turning it into the perfume bottle, I want that to be at the bottom. I'm just afraid if somebody tries to pull the perfume bottle top, then it'll fall apart. Probably not. I used some crazy glue on this thing, but just in case. So here is the very top, the gold top of my perfume bottle, and it has 2 pieces. I am just going to fold all of the edges. They're all mountain folds. And then I'm going to use Scor-Tape because mine is shiny. If you weren't using a shiny cardstock, glue would work beautifully. Not a big deal. As this is coming together, I need you to know how well designed this is. Every time I put together something from Pixie Dust, I am surprised at how easily and intuitively it goes together. So I added some Scor-Tape, and I'm just lining up the side score lines so that this is flush right against the other score line. Then I'm going to flip it over. I'm adding a little bit of Scor-Tape to the middle sections. The larger piece, there's like a middle section that's left, okay? And that is going to help to keep my box closed. I am folding in on the second score line, and then I will just lay that fancy top flat. You can tell it's the fancy top because it's got this little embossed detail. Then, as I go to close this, one side of that flap has a straight edge and one has an angled edge. If I make sure that the straight edge of the flap is flush against my folded side flap, everything ends up square. It is perfectly, beautifully square. I was shocked at how well this came together. I was a little worried about it because I'm a little type A. Nope, not an issue. Then I'm just adding a little bit of Scor-Tape to finish this off and this is the side flaps of the decorative piece, and I will fold those closed. And now I have the top of my perfume bottle totally done. You could add that straight to the bottle. Like, absolutely, I could see that working. I am going to go all out. I'm going to use all the pieces. So this is the teeniest, tiniest little box, and it's going to sit right underneath the gold box just to create a little extra level of elegance to this, I think. I have a tiny little flap on the long edge, okay? I just pointed to it, and I'm going to add a little dot of glue. I'm going to fold this flat to secure it. I like doing it that way. I find that things end up square a little better, but I am going to pop it open real quick because I know that my glue squished out a little. So now I'm folding in the side flaps, and the top flaps and the bottom flaps just meet. Okay, they don't overlap. And I like that. It means that my gold box will sit flush on top of it, and I'm not going to have it tilting one way or the other, but I do need to keep those closed. So I am using some Scor-Tape, just some double-sided tape, and I am adding that, and then I'm going to center it. I just set it very lightly to figure out where I want it, and then I'll press it down. And I'm going to do the same thing to add this to the base of the box. Ultimately, we're going to add some glue, but I'll walk you through why I did that and why you may or may not want to. I put a dot on the box with my pencil just to give myself a visual of where I wanted this to line up. And again, I will set it on there very gently, make sure I like the position, and then press down. So I'm opening up my box and I'm pressing my fingers inside to try to get really good adhesion. But because my tape didn't go all the way to the edges, I felt like you could see a tiny little gap between the blue box and the gold box, and between the blue box and the like the actual perfume bottle. So I pulled it back off, which I could do because it's glossy cardstock, and I am using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. This is the glue I like for slick surfaces, and I used my finger just to spread that as evenly as I could all along the blue box, so it's going all the way to the edges, because that's what I'm trying to solve here. I'm trying to make sure that this sits completely flush, but I also don't want it oozing out of there, right? So that's why I'm kind of using my finger. It's just, to me, the easiest way to go about this. And then I held it. It took a little while, but I don't know if you can see, it's beautifully flush on there. It just worked a lot better for me, but I'm a little extra. I am going to add a happy birthday to well, really the back of the box, because our gold fill is the front. So I am using some Versamark on some dark navy cardstock, same navy that's on the inside. And I have just powdered the potatoes out of that. I am adding some gold embossing powder to that cardstock, and I am just going to flick off the extra, and then I will heat emboss this. For the past month or two, I've been using this little clipboard, and it's been magical. It just has kept my paper from warping too much. So maybe heads up on that. If you find your paper warps a bunch, try a clipboard. Because it's really dark cardstock and I added all of that anti-static powder, I find that the best way for me to remove as much as possible is to use an eraser. It's just a regular old eraser. And that does the trick beautifully. I'm then taking that little piece that we used to cut the window out of our perfume bottle, and I cut out my happy birthday. There is another square to cut side pieces, but I didn't feel like I needed it on this. I wanted to let as much of that shimmer white cardstock show as I could. So I will just add the birthday wishes to, really, again, the back. You can tell it's the back because of the way the box opens and where the seam of the box is, but I can't decide which one I will display in the case. You guys, I can't wait for you to see the case. It's so amazing. So this is my box. I'm going to open it up. I've got enough room for quite a few treats, or like a little tiny lipstick. That I'm saying that because this is from my sister, and that's what she got me for my birthday, was this little lipstick that was so cute and awesome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I would love to have you, and I will see you next time.